front. Okay. We won't use that until it's time. Could we share? Is it okay? I mean.
And we're live.
Nam Amidabut, Nam Amidabut, Nam Amidabut, Nam Amidabut, Nam Amidabut, Nam Amidabut. Kansho. Namandabits, 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 namandabits.
Good morning. Today is April 10th, 2022, and we welcome you to New York Buddhist Church's live streaming Sunday service, broadcast on Facebook and YouTube. Today is our annual HANAMATSURI service celebrating the birth of the historic Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama Shakyamuni Buddha. We will start today's service with quiet sitting. Please sit up straight, gently calm your mind, and follow your breath. We will begin with Sambujo, 3 respectful callings, followed by Hyobyakumon, aspirations. Today's chant is Moku Ge, Tan-Nembutsu, and Ekoku, merit transference in Japanese and English. We invite you to make Oshoko incense offerings and pouring of sweet tea during the chanting. Following the chant will be Vandana and Sarana, led by Reverend Gary Shobo Jaskula. Today's Gobonsho, Letters of Renyo Shonin, is Threefold Refuge. Our reading today is conducted by Reverend Gary. Dr. Aaron Proffitt of Albany Buddhist Sangha will give today's Dharma message. To end service, we will sing in Lumbini's garden and Nembutsu together. Namo Amida Butsu.
We respectfully call upon Tathagata Amida to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon Tathagata Shakyamuni to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon the Tathagatas in the 10 directions to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. Today is Kanbutsu or HANAMATSURI, either the bathing of the Buddha gathering or flower festival. Today, we, members and friends of the New York Buddhist Church, gather to observe the birthday of Siddhartha Gautama, the Indian prince who became the Buddha Shakyamuni, the awakened one, the sage of the Shakyas. Siddhartha was born on the 8th day of April. Soon after his birth, flowers bloomed everywhere, and it was also said that flowers fell from the sky. A light, sweet rain descended from the heavens to bathe the body of the newborn baby. Following this tradition, a special pavilion of flowers has been placed today over a basin of sweet tea to bathe the image of the baby Siddhartha. Near the pavilion is a white elephant, in accordance with Queen Maya's dream, the mother of Siddhartha, announcing his birth. Wonderful indeed is the Dharma that seeks to awaken all sentient beings. May we all realize the meaning and purpose of Shakyamuni's appearance in the world, so that we may understand and rely on his teachings. Please repeat the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, so now we are going to have the Sutra Chanting. And today it's a special chant which you received in the handout called Moku Ge. And I'm going to read the little introductory text here that for the people at home who can't see it. Pouring sweet tea, Moku. This custom originally was practiced by the Brahmins. They used to pour perfumes and other sweet-smelling liquids as blessings. Later, Buddhists adopted this custom to be used at HANAMATSURI, or Buddha Day, celebration to bless the infant Buddha. A legend tells that a dragon came down from heaven at this time of the birth of the Buddha and poured scented water on the infant Buddha. So while we chant the sutra, you're welcome to come up and do Oshoko first, and then pour sweet tea over the baby Buddha, and then return to your seat. Originally, we were supposed to have the children start with this, but they jumped the gun. But it was very lovely nonetheless, and thank you very much for doing it. And if you want to come up again and pour some more, that's okay. So, let's have the Sutra Chanting.
Shonyo. 上智小 Gato koni kudokusuri kanyoku yorai joshin gaton gan moku shonyorai jochi shogun kudokudu gojoku shujo ryoriku dosho nyorai joshin keishu daisho bogyapon enjo tengeryo sokuson gato koni kudokusui kanyoku yorai joshin gakon han moku shonyorai joshi shogun kudokudu gojoku shudo ryoriku dosho nyorai joshin keishu daisho bogabon tenko tengeryo sokuson gato koni nikudokusui kanyoku nyorai joshin gakon kan moku shonyorai jochi shogun kudokudu gojoku shujo ryoriku dosho nyorai joshin keishu daisho bogyabon tenko tengeryo sokuson gato koni kudokusui kanyoku nyorai joshin gakon kan moku shonyorai jochi shogun kudokudu gojoku shujo ryoriku dosho nyorai joshin keishu daisho bogyabon tenjo tengeryo sokuson gato koni kudokusui kanyoku nyorai
Chosho Nyorai Jo Shin Keishu Dai Shobo Jaskula Tenjo Tenge Ryo Sokuson Gato Kon Iku Dokusui Kanyoku Nyorai Jo Shin Gakon Kan Moku Nyorai Jochi Shogun Kyudoku Goshoku Shujo Riku Dosho Nyorai Jo Shin Keshu Dai Shobo Jaskula Tenjo Tenge Ryo Sokuson Gato Koniku Dokusui Kanyoku Nyorai Josho Shin Please rise for the Vandana and Sarana. It's found on page 167 if you're using the book.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
I go to the Buddha for guidance.
I go to the Buddha for guidance.
I go to the Dharma for guidance.
I go to the Dharma for guidance.
I go to the Sangha for guidance.
I go to the Sangha for guidance.
Namo Kie Butsu.
Namo Kie Butsu.
Namo Kie Ho.
Namo Kie Ho.
Namo Kie So.
Namo Kie So.
Namandas.
Namandalas, 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 namandalas. Please be seated.
We're going to read together the Threefold Refuge, which is found in your purple book on page 9, and then the Japanese version is on page 6 and 7. So we'll start first with the English. Rare is it to receive life in human form, yet now I have received it. Rare is it to hear the Buddha Dharma, yet now I have heard it. Unless I cross this elusive world in the present life, in what life could I possibly cross it? Let us assemble together and take refuge in the three treasures with deep sincerity. I take refuge in the Buddha. My sincere wish is that, together with all beings, I may understand and experience the great path and rise to the highest Bodhi mind. I take refuge in the Dharma. My sincere wish is that, together with all beings, I may deeply enter the storehouse of sutras and attain ocean-like wisdom. I take refuge in the Sangha. My sincere wish is that, together with all beings, I may accordingly be united in the great assembly and become free from all delusions. The highest, most profound and wondrous Dharma is rare to encounter, even through millions of kalpas. Now I am able to see and hear it, to receive and keep it. It is my sincere wish that I may understand the true and real essence of the Tathagata. Now we'll read the Japanese together. The Romaji is on page 6 and the Japanese on page 7. Rai San Mon. 人参受けがたし今すでに浮く。仏法聞きがたし今すでに聞く。好み根性に向かってどせずんば。さらにいずれの章に向かってかの子に脅せん。大衆もろともに指針に三本に消えし立て祭るべし。自ら仏に消えし立て祭る。まさに願わく馬主上とともに大道を体現して無常へ起こさん。自ら法に消えし立て祭る。まさに願わく馬主上とともに深く胸像に入りて死へ海のごとくならん。自ら僧に消えし立て祭る。まさに願わく馬主上とともに大衆を通りして一切無下ならん。無常珍人未明の法は百千番号にも会えようことかたし。我今検問し従事することを得たり。願わくば如来の真実義を下し立て祭らん。ナモアミダ仏。
ナモアミダ仏。
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 So this is a reading compiled, redacted actually, from the Mahayana Sutras about today's feast day. The Bodhisattva at this time assumed the form of a huge white elephant with 6 tusks descended from the Tusita heaven. He then passed under Queen Maya's right arm and entered her womb as she slept peacefully. The palace was filled with joy and peace. Auspicious clouds trailed in the sky and enveloped the tiled roofs of the lofty towers. One day, in the last month of her pregnancy, the queen decided that she would like to pass the spring day in a flower garden. Receiving permission from the king and attended by a retinue of ladies-in-waiting, she had herself driven to the Lumbini grove. The trees were abloom with beautiful flowers that gave off a pleasant fragrance. The deep green grasses were like the tail feathers of a peacock and swayed like soft, fine silk blown by the wind. The queen took a pleasant stroll. She leaned on the limb of an Oshoko tree, which drooped down because from the weight of its flowers. At that moment, the Bodhisattva was born, suddenly and peacefully. Immediately after birth, he took 7 steps in each of the 4 directions and proclaimed, "In heaven above and on earth below, I am the most honored one. I shall dispel suffering that fills the world." The divine beings residing in space praised the virtues of the mother, Queen Maya. The Naga king rained down cold and warm water and bathed the body of the Bodhisattva. The great earth trembled and shook with joy. Shortly thereafter, the infant was received by the queen, and since everything proceeded without difficulty, the prince was named Siddhartha, which means whose goal is achieved. 7 days after his birth, his mother, Queen Maya, departed this world and was reborn in the Tavatsima heaven. And her younger sister, Mahaprajnapati, assumed the role of compassionate foster mother to the prince. At that time, the sage Asita, who had been living in the mountains near the city of Kapilavatu, was startled by the auspicious signs that accompanied the prince's birth. He visited the royal palace, taking along with him his nephew, a child named Narada. Asita cradled the prince reverently and gazed down upon him for a long time. But soon, choking with tears of sadness, he said, "O king, if this child remains at home, he will become a universal monarch and bring peace to the 4 worlds. But he will without a doubt leave home in search of the path and will become a Buddha. I am an old man and shall not be able to hear the teachings of this Buddha. Realizing this, I shed tears of sorrow." King Suddhodana heard these words and rejoiced, making offerings to the sage and Narada in a variety of ways. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. And so good morning, thank you for coming today. We will now have our Dharma message, and it will be given by Professor Aaron Proffitt, who I would like to introduce. He is a co-founder of the Albany Buddhist Sangha, which is part of our church. Many people don't know that, but it is. And he is an assistant professor of Japanese studies and East Asian studies at SUNY Albany. He joined the East Asian Studies Department in 2015. He teaches various courses on East Asian religion, Buddhism, the academic study of religion, and is the faculty advisor of the University of Albany Buddhist Student Group. His research focuses on 12th and 13th century Japanese Buddhism in the context of a broader East Asian and Mahayana theories of ritual research, that is, mantra, spells, etc., the afterlife, and debates about the relationship between Buddhist practices and the attainment of enlightenment. And he is also a ministerial aspirant, so this is great for us. So without further ado, let's listen to Aaron and hear some Dharma message.
Thank you, Gary, for the kind introduction. And thank you to the New York Buddhist Church for inviting me to come talk today. On the occasion, thank you for inviting me to come speak on the occasion of HANAMATSURI, the Festival of Flowers, or Buddha's birthday. My name is Aaron Proffitt, professor of Japanese studies at SUNY Albany. I have a PhD in Buddhist studies, and I teach classes on Zen, Pure Land, Esoteric Buddhism, and the Lotus Sutra, as well as general introductions to the study of religion. And for the next hour and a half, I'll be giving a lecture on transitive and intransitive verbs in the Tan-Nembutsu. Sorry. Anyway, all right. Usually when I speak about Buddhism, it's in an academic mode. Recently, I've been working with Hoshina Seki to produce some intro classes for the American Buddhist Study Center. Check those out on their YouTube page if you haven't. In addition to my work as a Buddhist scholar, I've practiced Buddhism in one form or another for over 25 years, and for more than 15 years, Shin Buddhism is where I found my spiritual home. And thanks to the support of the New York Buddhist Church and the tireless efforts of Reverend Gary, we are building a Sangha up in Albany. So please feel free to join us in person or via Zoom Tuesdays at 6:30. Today I want to talk about stories and what we do with stories. 2,500 years ago or so, near the border of Nepal, a great teacher was born. And now we are gathered in New York City, what many people refer to as the best city in the world, to celebrate the legacy of that this individual left on the world. Like all great stories, the story of the life of the Buddha has many layers of meaning. Each person who learns about the life and teachings of Buddha may take something different from the story, and over time, many people have added their own layers to the story. Early European scholars tried to peel back layers of the story to find the historical core, but in the process took away a lot of the stuff that is actually fun and interesting. And also, as Buddhists know, things in the world, including stories, are fundamentally lacking in any core or essence. All things and all stories are open, fluid, dynamic, and defined and understood in particular contexts. Each of us, and Buddhists throughout history, approach the story of Buddha in our own way, based on the causes and conditions upon which our lives depend. We start where we are, and the further we engage with the various layers of the story, life of the Buddha, the more we may learn about ourselves. I first encountered Buddhism when I was 12 or 13. I was in Barnes & Noble in Middle Tennessee, where I grew up, and I asked my stepmom to buy me a book, Alan Watts's The Way of Zen. My mind was blown, and the course of my life altered forever. I went to an elementary school called Robert E. Lee Elementary, and I spent my formative years in Lynchburg, Tennessee, the home of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Growing up, I attended Bible study camp most summers, went to church often, and spent a lot of time reading the Bible. But the environment where I lived was afflicted with various ideologies of exclusion: racism, sexism, homophobia, and so on. I aspired to love my neighbor, but I encountered a lot of people who didn't practice what they preached. When I read about Buddhism and encountered the idea of the Bodhisattva, a being who aspires to help all beings, I was inspired. I read one book, and I read another, and another. Eventually, I would skip class to read more. Now there's a layer of my story that involves me pulling myself up by my bootstraps, working hard, and finally landing my dream job, which I currently have. There's another version of my story, other layers, however, that emphasize my great debt to all those who have helped me. We all depend upon so many people in our life, and yet we often fall into the trap of self-centered thinking. We imagine ourselves as the protagonist of a story, with others serving perhaps as antagonists. My story is not really my story. My story and your story is actually a confluence of elements. I am because you are. Returning to the life of the Buddha, which is why we're gathered here today, we can think about different layers to that story. From one perspective, a very popular perspective, we have the story of a solitary male protagonist who overcomes adversity, the hero's journey. From another perspective, we have the bodhisattva who aspires to help all beings, the bodhisattva who is aided in their journey by a mother and father, gods and goddesses, women and men, by the earth goddess herself, and like the earth, there's layers to it. Each of us, as little bitty baby bodhisattvas, also rely upon the power of others. In some versions of the story, upon his birth, the Buddha-to-be emerges from his mother's right side, takes 7 steps, and from each step a lotus blossom blooms. He points to the heaven and earth and speaks. In the Buddhacharita, he says, "This is my last rebirth. With this birth, I will save all beings." In this version, the focus is squarely on all beings. Other versions of the story, baby Buddha points to heaven and earth and declares, "I alone am honored in heaven and earth, heaven above and earth below." For many Buddhists, for Buddhists seeking a story about a solitary male protagonist, this is the version that is emphasized, "I alone." There are other versions and other layers. Who is the I in this statement? I alone in heaven and earth. Is it I, the solitary male protagonist, or perhaps does I actually include all beings? As we encounter the story of Shakyamuni, or Dharmakara Bodhisattva, who becomes Amitabha Buddha, we actually encounter our own story as well. Like many of you, I'm sure, I've noticed recently that Hollywood has pretty much only been making remakes of stuff. It feels like I am the target demographic. I'm in my late 30s now, and I have little kids. So I was a little kid in the mid-80s. How many remakes have come out that cash in on this mid-80s, early 90s nostalgia? They want the target demographic to watch the stories they grew up on with their kids now. One thing I've learned about getting older is that the self, the I, the ego that moves through life acquires layers also. For example, I'm the type of sentient being for whom nothing sounds cooler than mid-90s hip-hop, and nothing quite hits that nostalgia button like 80s cartoons. Those are some of my layers. Recently, the cartoon He-Man got remade by Netflix. He-Man, as the name might suggest, is a hyper-masculine protagonist. He-Man possesses great power, and he calls that power by yelling, "I have the power." When I was a kid, I had the toys, I had the castle, I had the sword, and the fake strap-on muscles. And I had the power. A few years ago, my grandmother was jokingly asking me if I still had the power. I leaned in real close, and I said, "You betcha." Like many American kids, I was raised on cartoons that follow the strong male protagonist on their adventures. This reboot made a lot of people upset, mostly for reasons that are quite unfortunate. Sometimes people don't like it when you find new layers to a story or add new layers of your own. This is true of pop culture and religion. The Netflix He-Man remake is interesting because it's different. The He-Man remake is not about He-Man so much, but rather the story follows a diverse cast of female heroes who discover that they have the power. The power is not an I thing, not a he-man thing, but a we-us thing. The power of the universe is not the property of a single individual, but rather it is part of us all because we are part of the universe. The fans who had expected a return to the good old days of blonde male protagonists got a different layer to the story. Back to Shakyamuni. Who is the I in the sentence? I alone. For a bodhisattva to attain awakening, they must accumulate the great perfections, including generosity, wisdom, and compassion. For a bodhisattva perfect in compassion, who is the object of their striving? The I, the ego, or all beings? For some practitioners, those who see themselves as solitary protagonists on a hero's journey, perhaps there is one layer to the story that they may emphasize. There are other layers, however, that tell a different story. There's a version of the life of the Buddha that might emphasize how the Bodhisattva came to be the Buddha through the help of others. His mother Maya gave her life. His aunt Mahapajapati raised him. His teachers guided him. The gods stepped in as well. Young Sujata shared a meal with the ailing ascetic. Even Mara plays a key role. Sometimes the villain of the story plays an extremely important part. I might add that some of the great teachers I've met have not been very nice people. They provided me with great lessons in what kind of teacher I wanted to be, and perhaps what kind of teacher I did not want to be. The person who cuts you off on the highway gives you a gift, the opportunity to practice patience. Like Siddhartha, we are actually surrounded by people and forces beyond our control, and that other power is the power that our lives truly depend on. We can choose to focus on one layer of the story, I as the protagonist of the story, or we can choose to focus on the many ways that our story is possible only because of the help we get from others. I am because you are. My awakening is your awakening. There's layers to it. As each of us encounters the Dharma, we choose which layers to emphasize. When Honen struck out on his own to participate in the evolving Pure Land movement, he looked across the diversity of the Buddhist tradition and chose to focus on certain layers. Honen asked of his tradition, which is a greater example of perfect compassion? Practices that require elite education, lots of money, and superior faculties, or a path that is universally accessible? Namo Amida Butsu symbolizes, and in some deeper sense is, the power that is beyond self. In the world of elite practitioners, this is a layer of the evolving story of Buddhism that Honen chose to emphasize, helping make the Dharma accessible for women, men, monks and laity, and all beings. In the Shoshinge, Shinran says the sole reason Shakyamuni appeared in the world is to teach about the primal vow. He's not simply saying, yay, Pure Land is the best. Rather, he's saying that the point of Buddhism is a compassion that is truly universal, the bodhisattva vow to help all beings. This is the layer he chose to emphasize. Up in Albany, we are a growing Sangha, a satellite Sangha of New York Buddhist Church. We are because you are. There are many kinds of Sanghas in the world, each emphasizing different layers of the Buddhist tradition. Some Sanghas might emphasize community, family, potlucks, and so on, in addition to meditation, chanting, and Dharma study. Some Sanghas might emphasize meditation and have no room for family. Our Sangha is all about family and accessibility. We're here celebrating a birth. In Buddhism, every birth is a rebirth. Nothing is self-created. All things are interconnected. Things depend upon causes and conditions. In Shin Buddhism, we talk a lot about birth. Some people think that this form of birth is nothing more than being reborn in a paradise in the next life. Digging deeper into the layers of the Pure Land tradition, the story of Dharmakara Bodhisattva who becomes Amitabha, digging deeper into the layers of the story that Shinran emphasized, we find that birth is actually something much more profound. When we discover that we rely upon a power beyond the self, when we give rise to joyful gratitude and recognition of the interconnected universe of which we are all a part, we are reborn in the Pure Land. In that moment, we awaken to the limitless light of awakening, the light to which baby Siddhartha would awaken, the light to which the Bodhisattva vows to share with all beings. With that, I'll conclude. Thank you. Namo Buddhas.
So thank you, Aaron, for that beautiful Dharma message. There's a lot for us to think about and to make this day real for us, real. It's not just something that happened in the past. It's something that's ongoing in each of us. And now we will have our Gathas. Please rise for the Gatha in Lumbini's garden, which is found on page 175, followed by Nembutsu on page 169.
In Lumbini's
Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Please be seated.
So we'll now close our service with closing Gassho. Please put your palms together and bow your head. These are words of Shinran Shonin. Shakyamuni Tathagata appeared in this world solely to teach the ocean-like primal vow of Amida. We, an ocean of beings in an evil age of 5 defilements, should entrust ourselves to the Tathagata's words of truth. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, and so now we have our favorite part of the service, which is the announcements and acknowledgements. But first, so we'd like to acknowledge our greeter today was Claudia Kahn and Miki Sakai, our greeters, and our piano was played by Nobuko Kodama-san. But today, we have very special helpers. This beautiful Hanamido shrine was decorated by some very special people, and if you would like to come up when I call your name, and so people can know who you are, I'm calling Maya Iwaki, and then Maya Proffitt also, and Julian Proffitt. Okay, so turn around, take a bow. And Lily. Lily too. Lily, you're a fixture here, and you know that we take everyone for granted, so that happens. That's but you are a great treasure of the Buddhist Church also. So these are our Hanamido decorators today. Thank you very much. And there are some extra flowers on the altar done by an anonymous person named Ruth. And I believe that is it, right? That is it. So I would like to remind you, especially those who are watching at home, yes, we are open for in-person services on Sundays at 11:30. However, our classes and meditations are not open to the public just yet. We are still online, and there are instructions on the website as to how to get links and invitations to the classes and the meditation, and I hope you will pick up on that. We also would like to encourage your dana or financial support. And the best way to do that is to become a member of the temple, because it really matters to have people who sign the dotted line and become part of this temple. But money is good too. But anything you can give, it will help us out. But all of that information about membership and one-time donations can be found on the website. There are links to the website. Just type in Google New York Buddhist Church, it will come right up. In YouTube, New York Buddhist Church, it will come right up. Facebook, I would imagine, similar. And thank you for your support. And that concludes our service. unless anyone else has an announcement that I do not know of. Okay, so see you next time. Tell all your friends.